Alright, so iPadOS 26's developer beta has been out for about a month now, and I've been using it for a while, and now that the public beta is out, more people can give it a try, so should you install it? I'll be going over like the good stuff, the improvements first, and then towards the end of the video, I'll be talking more about some of the bad stuff and the reasons you might want to wait before updating. I am filming this before Apple releases the public beta of iPadOS 26, so at that point, some of my complaints might be addressed, but anyways, let's get started. The first change you'll notice right away is the new visual redesign that Apple's calling Liquid Glass. After many years, Apple is changing their design language and going for a more glassy look rather than the minimal flat look we're used to. I'm still taking some time to get adjusted on my iPad, but I think we'll all grow to like it. It's really reminding me of the Windows Vista in 7 days. This visual redesign across all of their devices comes together with Apple rebranding all of their device operating system names to end in 26 so it looks more unified. But back to the visual redesign. The lock screen also gets the glass treatment and the clock can now extend based on the wallpaper you have. There's also a cool 3D spatial depth effect with some of the wallpapers that makes it look like you're kind of peering into a scene, and also a beautiful new album art view that takes up more of your screen. And overall, the entire operating system gets that liquid glass redesign, and you can see it in the control center and in various apps like menus and stuff. The new icons have been redesigned to look like they're made out of glass, and there's also a new clear option that looks really clean, but it does make differentiating app icons a bit difficult. It really does look nice though. I have it on my iPad right here. App tinting also looks a lot better than, well, whatever we had in iPadOS 18. The camera app also gets a pretty hefty redesign, which I'm not sure I like at the moment. Now, since the initial release of iPadOS 26 Beta 1, there's been a couple of changes. Notably, there was some backlash about the reduced legibility from the transparency. So iPadOS Beta 3 actually got rid of a bunch of the transparency effects and things look more frosted now, and you can kind of see this in places like the control center. It's kind of an awkward stage where some elements of the UI have a glassy look while others have that frosted look. However, this is a developer beta, so it's likely they'll keep playing around with it leading into the public beta. There is one big backlash from the community that surprisingly Apple is still holding out on, but we'll get to that. Overall, the iPad software has looked the same for over 10 years now, so the new liquid glass redesign is a refreshing change to the iPad's look and feel. Next up, we have a bunch of new productivity updates like a new window management system. Window management system. So, people who've used the iPad, right? For so many years, they've been clamoring about like, oh, we want the iPad to be more like a Mac. We want it to be more like a computer. And it did give us something called Stage Manager in 2022 with iPadOS 16, but even that was kind of janky and a bit difficult to use. And it wasn't true windowed multitasking. You could only have 4 windows at once, and it would kind of like awkwardly like shift your windows into like predetermined grids. It wasn't ideal. So this year, iPadOS 26, Apple caved and they gave us a proper window management system. So now you can have as many windows as you want, open on your iPad desktop, you can resize them to whatever shape you want, put them wherever you want, and you also get window snapping via the keyboard, which is really awesome. I really like it with the keyboard. That's something I've been missing from the Mac that I'm really glad is now on the iPad. Some other productivity updates include a new cursor. Like for the longest time now, we've had a circle as a cursor for the iPad, and now it's an actual cursor shape. There's no more morphing into the apps and acting all weird and special. It's just a regular cursor now. And a change that they added is that if you wiggle it, it'll become bigger just like a Mac, so it's easier to find your cursor. I think that's really awesome. Another new addition to the iPad is the menu bar. This makes the iPad more Mac-like, and it shows you a bunch of different options and things you can do within the app that you're currently using. And if you double click it, it'll expand to full screen, just like a Mac. And it also has the little multitasking traffic light indicators, red for close, yellow for minimize, and then the green for all your like windowing options, so you can get full screen and stuff, just like a Mac. And you can also put folders in the dock now. So you can have your downloads folder in the dock, you can have whatever kind of folders you want in your dock so they're easily accessible, just like a Mac. Also coming from the Mac is the Preview app. This is an awesome app that lets you mark up PDFs and stuff, and it's really awesome that it's coming to the iPad, and it's also coming to the iPhone. In the Files app, there's also a bunch of updates. You can finally change the color of your folders. Wow. And you can also give different icons to your folders to make them easier to navigate through. This is one of those features where it's more like, wow, you couldn't already do that? There's also now background tasks. So normally when you're editing a video on your iPad and you're exporting it, it'll be like, hey, do not close this window. Wait until exporting is finished to close this window. And then you kind of just have to sit awkwardly and stare at your iPad while the app exports. Well, now you don't have to do that. Apple's introducing background tasks. So you can do stuff like export videos in the background while you do other stuff on your iPad, which again is one of those features where it's like, wow, I couldn't already do that, but it's very good to have it here. Lastly, one of the features that stuck out to me was Apple adding the feature to manually choose your microphone input like you would on a Mac. Come back. So if you have an external microphone plugged into your iPad, you can go into Control Center and choose which microphone you want to record from, the default iPad microphone or the microphone you connect it to, or whichever microphone you choose, which is really nice for someone who's looking to produce content straight from their iPad. Overall, there's a general theme of making iPadOS become sort of a macOS Lite. It feels almost like a computer from a parallel universe rather than just a bigger iPhone now, which is pretty nice if you like using your iPad as a computer. But as someone who likes using their iPad primarily as a tablet, there are some downgrades that we'll get to in a bit. Now, throughout the video, you've seen the iPad in this case, the MOFT Dynamic Folio. MOFT sent this product over, but they're not bribing me to say it'll give you superpowers or anything, so these are just my honest thoughts. Now, straight up, this is probably the most unique iPad case I've ever used. Like, this isn't your typical iPad kid case. It's really thin, it's as thin as paper, and it folds like it too, so I can fold it into pretty much whatever I want my iPad to be, turning it from this kind of boring flat slab into, well, pretty much anything. For example, when I want to write down some notes or draw, I like using this floating mode. It angles the iPad while lifting it to a height that's easy to use. When I want to watch something or use my iPad as a second screen, I use this mode that elevates my iPad, and as an added bonus, I can also use this mode to mount the iPad on my leg, which is useful to me as a student, like if I'm maybe studying on like a bench or something and I don't have a desk handy. When I'm reading or calling someone, the portrait mode that this case comes with is really useful, although my favorite mode is probably the dual screen mode because it lets you prop your phone up next to the iPad. This lets me have like a lecture open on my iPhone while I take notes on my iPad, and I could see this being really useful if you draw, like having your reference on your phone while you draw it on your iPad, and you could always use it to play Subway Surfers gameplay while you watch Netflix and doom scroll Reddit at the same time. Bruh. The case is made out of MOFT's Movas leather, which is super stain resistant. There's also an optional pencil holder that magnetically attaches to keep the pencil secure, and it also doubles as a ruler in case you need to measure something real quick. So if you want to learn more about this case, check out the links in the description and comments below to get your hands on the MOFT Dynamic Folio and use code FP10 for 10% off. Thanks to MOFT for sending this over, and now back to the video. Alright, not everything is sunshine and rainbows. So let's talk about some of the downgrades with iPadOS 26. Battery life, it's been mid, and I get that this is a beta, but I am worried about the final release because all the fancy like liquid glass graphics, they're gonna be more graphically intensive than the previous flat design. So I'm a bit worried at how older devices are gonna handle processing all the extra graphics and stuff, and I could totally see a bunch of devices taking a decent hit on battery life. Like even my iPad Air M2 that I got less than a year ago, noticeably worse battery life. Then again, this is a beta, so this is not very indicative of the final software's performance. And for a developer beta, it's been relatively stable. It has crashed on me a decent amount, but overall, it's been okay. It's been totally usable. I've been using it for around a month now, and it's not too bad. But now onto the actual downgrades, aka features that Apple has removed. Split view and slide over. That's the big one. I'm still not used to those features being removed. So basically, before iPadOS 26, if you have an iPad on like iPadOS 18 or earlier, you can even try this now. Beforehand, you could have an app open full screen on your iPad, and then you could literally just pick an app icon from your dock or something, drag it, and then you'd have two apps right there. And then you could also have an app in slide over mode, which is basically like kind of like an iPhone sized app open on the side, and then it would always stay on top of the main app you were using. And I really like that. Like for example, I could have my homework question open on the side while I had my like actual workbook open on my iPad, and I could just swipe the app in, take a look at the question I needed to solve, write that down, and then swipe it away again. Then when I finished the question, I could check the solution by swiping it back in. It was really quick, really simple. And if I wanted to just reply to a text really quickly, I could slide over the Messages app, type my text, send it, and then slide it away. It was a really nice, simple way to implement multitasking into the iPad. And as for split view, you can still kind of have two apps open at the same time. You just gotta swipe them to the side, but I find the gesture is still a bit awkward compared to just having the dedicated option available for you to toggle it on. And yeah, you can always use a keyboard to like do window snapping and stuff, and that's really quick and easy. But the thing is, the iPad is a tablet first. I think split view and slide over were better for multitasking when using it as a tablet. The thing is, us tech people are kind of in a bit of a bubble. We're very passionate about whether or not the iPad is a computer, a tablet, but the average person buys the iPad to use it as an iPad. They're buying it with the expectation that it's a tablet. They're not really like keeping up with all the tech news about whether or not the iPad is getting any closer to being a computer or not. They're not spending over $1,000 on the iPad Pro and a couple $100 on the Magic Keyboard so they can use it as a nerfed MacBook. So I'm curious as to how the general public perception is going to be to this new OS. I for one miss slide over and split view, like just the classic tablet multitasking, quite a bit because it just worked better when you were using the iPad as a tablet, aka what it's literally meant to be a tablet first. Like, I think these multitasking features are great, but I do think it's going to be too overwhelming for the average person who just wants to use the iPad as a tablet. And I have found during studying that while the new windowing system is great, it's just more inconvenient than using split view and slide over, because again, those were better for the iPad as a tablet. And especially on the 11-inch screen, the multitasking still feels just a bit cramped. So I'm curious to see how it's going to perform on like even smaller iPads, like the older 9th gen iPad or like the iPad minis. So basically, I miss the classic split view and slide over. I think Apple should bring it back. Lots of other people think that too. I've submitted feedback through the Apple Feedback app. They might listen, they might not. So I guess we'll see how it goes. Hey, maybe they have it in the public beta. Okay, so final verdict. Should you upgrade to iPadOS 26? Well, right now it's a beta software, right? So it's not going to be as stable as their regular releases. But if you want to try it out and test it, then you can use the public beta. Do it on like a secondary device and be sure to back up your data just in case anything goes wrong. I'm warning you now, you do not want to lose all of your data on your iPad. And September is like less than 2 months away at this point. So if you're patient enough, you can probably just wait for the September release when it releases to the general public. But if you do want to try out the public beta, it's not too hard to install. Just remember, I can't stress this enough, back your stuff up before you try it out, please. So my personal thoughts on iPadOS 26, it's an improvement, I think, much more multitasking features, a bunch of features that the iPad community has been clamoring about for years, finally made it in this year's release. They all just kind of threw everything at us. But I think ultimately what determines if the iPad can be a computer or not is the software. It doesn't matter if it has a menu bar, windowing system, right, the traffic lights. If it only runs iPad apps, then it's forever going to be constrained as an iPad. Like for example, if I need to use Excel for my work and this can only run a mobile version of Excel, that's never going to work out, right? I'm going to need a real computer like a Mac or a PC for that. But I think this is a great first step in the right direction. Just gotta wait and see if the app developers are going to adapt to this new software. And I also just love the added like customizability that the software comes with. Loving the clear icons, of course, and just the overall icon customization you get. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on iPadOS 26, if it'll be updating anytime soon. And if you do the public beta, please back your data up. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this video. Thank you guys for watching. Be awesome and stay techie. Bye. Another new edition, another new edition. Yo, Gert, yo.